Hello and welcome to this next session here at our x-dream event, our international event for our customers. I'm now here together with Oliver Meurer, our specialist for all the media asset management topics, and we would like to elaborate on a very special topic that very moment. This is the file exchange in between broadcasters and post-production facilities. So earlier in the session this morning with Jutta, you spoke about post-production in general, distributed environments. Now we want to limit that a little bit to focus ourselves on how a broadcaster would work with one or multiple post-production facilities. Let's say a little bit more the classical approach, not that fancy with clouds, more practical, more hands-on, but still when things are not happening all within a broadcaster. Oliver, could you please describe how a broadcaster and his external production partners, post-production partners, do interact?
Well, the first thing to actually say, because this segment is called file exchange, it's not just about exchanging a file. What you're actually doing is you're exchanging information. That information contains a file, but it also contains lots of other information, metadata, approval status, version, comments, etc., etc., etc. It could even include, through what follow-on workflow, what process does this file or this particular task need to run through. So it's a much larger field, and of course, if you look at the way broadcasters work today, let's say they need an external post-production house to do additional localization, so language versions, subtitles, edits, make me trailers, make me promos, sending the source file back and forth and sending a separate email or letter, very traditional,
fax.
Or fax, that's right, if you still have to find one. You could do that, but you probably will be out of the market fairly quickly because it'll simply take too long. You're incurring way too much cost and time. So what we really talk about is saying, I have a big system, I'm a broadcaster, let's say, or even I'm the post-production house and the broadcaster is my client. I need to be able to flexibly exchange information. And that information contains not just the video content, the right part of the video content, the right version, the right quality, but also all of the information. What are you to do, Stefan, if I'm asking you for a French version of my feature film?
So as an introduction to our topic, could you please describe a little bit more in detail how a kind of a prototype of a workflow that we are now discussing would look like? You spoke about a subtitle or probably a dubbing, but how would such a workflow look and how would people need to interact?
Now, I'll give you an example from SAP, for example, which is one of our large clients. SAP runs a flow center. It's their core media archive and their core production archive or production management system. Now, SAP produces a lot of content. It's everything that you see in the web is produced at some point somewhere. And they have about 40 external production houses, people who just actually make the video clips. So those need to come into SAP. So what we've created for SAP is an upload process that obviously includes metadata, that includes things like who's this for, who's the approver, what project does it belong to. So all of this information that I was talking about.
That's all about the shootings.
No, it's not just about the shooting. So the rights, where was the shot, who's the director, who are the talents, what rights have I bought, but also, for what purpose were we shooting this? Because usually they got commissioned and there's a project name, or maybe there's a budgetary number. All of that needs to be uploaded as well, because actually what you're doing is you're delivering a piece of good. So the production partner has a surface, a user interface from us to do that, which has wonderful technical tricks, which I'm not going to explain now, it takes too long, to make sure that we pick up all the items correctly.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I even have a screenshot on this, probably. Not sure, but I will have a look for that, whether I can find it.
So apart from the information of, what am I delivering, and obviously delivering the file, in the background, the flow center into which this file actually went goes and does all sorts of checks. It checks, is the file within the range of acceptable qualities? Have we virus scanned it? Is that okay? Is the metadata complete? Is the metadata sensical? So there's an awful lot of things that we do to check. If there's lots of green ticks, everything is fine, we transcode it. And then the Flow Center, what that actually does, it generates another room and it notifies the SAP reviewer, the recipient of that upload, for him to approve, comment, meaning, I'd like some changes done, or completely disapprove. The interesting part is, of course, we're talking about a PAM system sitting in the middle, but neither the uploader nor the approver actually sees the PAM. They don't need to. They don't want to. They've got their project. So the guy commissioning the clip, he doesn't know there's a PAM. He doesn't even know there's an archive. He doesn't care. He just sees his project. The people uploading, production partners, also just need to know about the project, not the machinery in the background and the other 5 million files, because they don't care and they shouldn't be seeing them anyway. So take that as a kind of an architecture which goes to the core of what we're talking about. You need to manage your projects. And that's what File Exchange really is about. So it's not just about getting a file in, it's lots of information. And if you look at it, you're actually managing a project, not just a file.
I think one day you shocked the SAP guys when you told them you are like a broadcaster.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. At first, I'm pretty sure they got shocked and they didn't think that very funny because they said, no, you totally misunderstand us. And I proved to be right because we now feed, I don't know how many websites of theirs, and they really produce a lot of program. And picking up on the SAP example, but this is true for all the broadcasters on the planet as well, think of language versions. Yeah. It's a huge topic. For example, we do the same thing for Volkswagen. Now, this is a very concrete example, and it's a really good one. Volkswagen sells you a car. You need to take the car to the garage. You live in Brazil. So you drive your nice Golf 5 to the garage and say there's a funny sound. Now, the guy in the garage in Brazil needs to know from Volkswagen how to fix that. So Volkswagen produces all these videos, but then they're in German or in English at best, not in Portuguese or Brazilian. So the way we handle that, again, a similar process, files come in, they go into a back-end system, which manages all the content, manages the technical processing, checks for all the rights, and then we notify a user in Brazil to invite him to create a Portuguese audio track. And he does that, and he can do that just with his laptop, really, and he uploads that, and hey presto, you've got a Brazilian version of how to fix the funny noise on your Golf 5.
So at the end of the day, why we are now naming corporate customers as examples, at the end of the day, it's the same workflow that a broadcaster would do if he needs a localization, or a production partner would do for a video-on-demand portal when they need a local version. It's always the exact same.
I took the corporate examples because it's pretty much there. They say yes and no. Yeah, they sort of say yes and no. A broadcaster customer of ours, in that approval process, will go more deeply. They will look at the colors, they will look at the sound, they will look at the exact way the edit was done, and they want to use timecode-based commenting for approval, disapproval, or further job instructions. Another thing that broadcasters need to add is versioning, not just for language versions, but they'll have 7 different types of
evening cut, the morning cut.
There you go. So all of that needs to be managed as a project, really, and that's why the word a file exchange between production or post-production and their customers is only part of the story.
Yeah. Before we come back to the project, we spoke about all the various, I often call it essences. So the video, the audio, the subtitles, I think they're way more like pictures.
The photos, the PDFs, the contract documents, the music scores, the what.
But I think the main difficulty is on the video. It's often the largest size files. So could you describe a little bit, what is the exact problem about exchanging video?
Well, the first problem we're going to have, and believe me, I know what I'm talking about, is if you have a lot of production partners supplying you with content, they will supply you with lots of rubbish as well. Stuff that doesn't work. Broken files, incomplete files, files that are way out of your spec range. So the first thing to do is actually detect that and very politely say, no, I'm not having that, and don't even accept it onto your platform because it's going to be rubbish inside your platform too. Yeah. So be able to have like a discotheque with a hard door, there's a doorman and he says, not with those shoes, my friend. We do the same thing for video files. So we basically detect them, we check the header, that's a very simple check, very fast. We go through QC where needed. And lastly, if we think we're in doubt, we get that with TV broadcasts a lot, is this suitable for prime time, i.e. in Germany before 8 o'clock in the evening, broadcast, because of this is child protection stuff, that needs to be looked at by a lawyer.
Yeah, true.
So then we have a room that just goes to the lawyer, he says yes, no, etc., etc.
But what about the heavy lifting of the files? Is that a topic?
Yes, it is, absolutely, especially if you're doing edits. We would strongly recommend that you send a proxy. Why are you sending a source file if you don't know that your customer is going to like that? Send him a proxy, he'll look at it, he'll give you his comments. If he says, yes, thank you so much, you send the source file. If he says, no, you need to make all these changes, don't waste your time, don't waste your traffic.
I think this what we also have seen here on this screenshot. So like you send someone an email, have a look for that file, and if he really wants it, then he is requesting the high-res. Well, otherwise he will send you information back about...
Exactly, he would actually simply hit the button approve, and then you'd get a notification.
Automatically.
You can now send the high-res. If you also happen to have a flow center on your end, the flow center will do that automatically for you.
What about security? So we have some customers that are super relaxed, and we have others they are careful, and we have others they're even a little bit paranoid.
Oh, totally.
So
extremely paranoid, I'd say.
Having more than just one firewall and all the securities. How do you deal with that in file exchange or project exchange?
Yeah, well, there's a number of things you can do, obviously. I mean, apart from obvious things like having a decently protected system, you know, strong passwords, etc., etc., doing virus checks, etc., watermarking, automatically watermarking any upload. That's still in the preview phase, so if somebody decides to film the screen, it still won't be easy to nick that. Limiting access, for sure. If, for example, I upload a very or I give you a copy of Spider-Man 17 to make me a German language version of that, I will automatically want that watermark, and it will say, this belongs to Oliver, this is a copy for Stefan, do not steal. And that's going to be on every single frame, and whatever you do, you're not going to be able to get rid of that. So if you post that on YouTube, you're not going to be not very difficult to find you.
I see.
No, so there's things you can do on the server side, on the periphery side. Obviously, you have protected servers, etc., firewalls, etc., etc. But there's lots of things you can do on the media side as well.
Would that mean that you can also kind of track the content, where it is, where it went?
Oh, absolutely. But that's an absolutely vital point. If we're exchanging a file, we're actually exchanging information. So the simple knowledge, Oliver uploaded this file on day time. Stefan reviewed it on day time and gave the following appraisal. That's crucial business information. If there's some hiccup, and you know, I go and say, yeah, but Stefan never sent me an approval, and you get to go into the system and said, yes, I did, and I told you exactly which frame was wrong, and I said that 5 weeks ago, you're going to have a strong hand. So tracking information, who did what, when, why, and how did they do that, all of that is logged in the system anyway, and it's just a matter of what bits would you like to see.
So I understood, me as a broadcaster, I have that things in hand. I can steer it, I can control it, I have reporting, logging, monitoring, all that things. But how would a production partner from the outside interact with me, or how would I interact with him?
Yeah.
So how would I send him a task to perform?
Well, there's multiple ways of doing it. The most simple thing is you send him a room. So I have a piece of content, and I would like you to do me a very nice French language version. So I would go to my archive, I would pick out the right content, I would simply drag and drop that into what we call a room. A room is a microsite that the system generates. It's a collaboration tool. I would then write a little bit of text. Dear Stefan, please make me a French version of this. And then I would assign certain rights. So I would permit you to download that file, but only as a preview. And yes, I will activate the please brand this, so it has my logo on it. Whatever you've downloaded is smaller quality and is protected by the logo, a watermark. Plus I would activate the upload function in the room. So you've downloaded the file, you've done your bit, you've taken 3 days. There's obviously a schedule in the room as well. Please send this back by Wednesday. You upload again. The room would show the status. So Stefan received the room. Stefan downloaded the file. Then on Wednesday, Stefan uploaded a new file. Next step, Oliver to approve. And it goes through that process. That's a very simple interaction. It's basically ping-ponging like you'd use email, except you don't want to attach files, like you'd use Dropbox, except you never ever want to use Dropbox because that's crazy. You're actually really I'm giving you access to my system, but just to that one file in just that quality with the branding that I want. If I do regular business with you, and we work a lot, it would get cumbersome to keep sending so many rooms. I would upgrade you and allow you to see entire projects. So a project would obviously contain sub-projects. There'd be lots of different files. Maybe they'd be different status, raw material, to be edited, to be subtitled, to be dubbed, whatever. And I would give you, as my dubbing partner, I would give you access to the subfolder, big project, subfolder to be dubbed.
Before we jump on the project, so the screenshots that we have seen here just now have been about creating such a send out and then the way how you receive it. That is what we have seen earlier. But this is how, let's say, a partner would more like, let's say, loosely communicate with me, because he would not yet have the access to all my project folders.
No, this is, I get to choose what access level I give to you. So it's a single file, or it could be a collection of files.
So this is for, let's say, a random production partner, or occasionally. It is, but what you described with the project, is that then more for someone that I have a more permanent relationship with, that continuously helps me doing my day-to-day business?
Well, typically you'd have exactly what we described in the headline. A broadcaster is going to communicate with a post-production partner, and in that one file, maybe it's a series. So it's got seasons, it's got episodes, there's lots of different files. And I don't want to send you 20,000 rooms, so I'm just simply going to give you access to my folder. Yeah, you can see it here.
Yeah, that is one of these examples.
And obviously it has multiple contents. And within each of those little thumbnails that we see, that is a media container. And I can see, okay, and the second one doesn't have the French language version yet. So I'm awaiting your upload. If you upload me something, it'll actually be in that second media container, and the tick will go green.
So that means different people with different roles have a little bit different view, and I assume also a little bit different rights to the system,
Absolutely.
what to do with
You
the
can
content.
fully steer that. I mean, if we're working so closely, I would probably give you access to the files, let you see all the metadata, but I wouldn't allow you to edit the metadata. But you can upload, you can download. I'm tracking everything anyway. But I wouldn't let you change my metadata anyway. You can change the metadata that you've entered. That's okay, because you originated it, and I don't want to do the work. So it's a matter of having a decent user engine right.
So, and this
engine.
project, so like project folders, can they also be shared with the external contributors, so that they get an active notification there's a new project for me to work on?
Precisely. That would be basically, a room would still be the carrier. But it would contain more than just one or two files. It would actually contain a whole project folder.
I see. And does the user then logs onto the main system, or would he still operate in this microsite that you mentioned earlier?
Actually, he'd be logging onto the main system, because everybody logs onto the main system. Even if you're using a room. Why do we do that? Because we want to know who you are, we want to know what you did, and we're going to track absolutely everything. So even if you're just using a room, but I've sent you a room with a login, you are actually logging onto the core system, and I'm really watching you.
Yeah, so to me it looks like I've just received a small piece of email, a small website, but in real life I'm connected with the main system.
Yeah, because we're never, ever, ever moving a file if we don't really have to, because that's dangerous, because it causes duplication. That's
we spoke about this yesterday, optimization and such.
Don't use Dropbox,
processes.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
You're going to lose track of your versions. You're creating doubles, etc., etc. That's what the room is. You've got a big house full of content, but I'm going to create a room just for Stefan. I'm going to put two of my contents in there so Stefan can see them, work with them, has certain functions, but I'm in control of what you see and what you get to do.
What possibilities do we have to share editing projects? So like from the rough cut to the editing stage towards the mastering. Can we share editing projects somehow as well? Or?
Yeah. What we have a lot of customers do is for a specific project, which is in production, they would create subfolders quite simply and say dailies or raw material selected for editing, edits, approved edits, dubbing graphics, etc., etc. And it basically is like a workflow chain. It just sort of goes down the project list, the folder list really, as a particular piece of content progresses. Keep in mind that, of course, you've got different users doing your editing and your graphics. It's usually not the same people. For sure, your dubbers are going to be different. So you need to steer who gets access to what folder, even within a single project.
I see. Now, I understand along the production process, we are generating more and more data. So is there any possibility for automation? So AI technology, for instance?
Yeah. AI is great. It offers a lot of things, especially on raw material. Typically, there's not much metadata there. AI is good at analyzing what the picture actually is showing. It's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough to give you a rough idea, and it's good enough for like initial logging information, really. AI, obviously, there's technical AI to detect faults in the file, similar to QC, obviously. But then again, there's editorial AI, which I think is quite interesting. So, for example, I've been delivered with a piece of content that has a very nice beach shot on it. And I know that still needs to be edited, and maybe we're just missing that one angle of the beach. But the AI can tell me there's a beach and it's got the following visualization, and the AI can actually go check in my own archive, do I perhaps already have a similar beach shot which I could use now in the editing process. So you're not searching by the metadata in your own archive. The AI will search for you, but based on what the visualization actually expresses.
So that helps me within the production process. Is it also helping me to generate metadata that I would use afterwards when the content is finished for the usage? So like
Sure.
playout, publishing,
Sure.
archiving, whatsoever?
Yeah, sure. Any metadata is useful. I mean, AI is not going to write you a nice little synopsis about your feature film.
Why?
But it might be able to tell you who the actors are. It will read out what the street signs were said, etc., etc. And of course, it will make you a transcription, which is a great base for a translation, which the AI can do for you as well. So at least you've got stuff to go on, and maybe you just need to improve it rather than build the entire thing from scratch. So there's lots of ways of using AI. With industrial customers, they're very interested in this whole transcription, translating business, because they do global events, live streaming events, and for example, the boss of Porsche prefers to present in German. Now, he doesn't speak Chinese, but they have Chinese customers and they have Chinese viewers. How about we just instantly translate his stuff into Chinese? It might not be perfect, but it's going to be better than just German.
That's very interesting. We are coming back again and again to this transcription and translation topic.
I like it.
It's nice that we have a special session on this then tomorrow. What else should our customer think about when they look at these exchange processes for post-production?
Look, the key thing to keep in mind, everybody calls it a file exchange, including me, but you're exchanging way more than a file. You're exchanging all sorts of information. It's business critical information. It could be your approval even. I bet it could be your editing instructions. It could be you're exchanging a file with a supplier of yours to give him the raw material for him to do his job. You need to make sure, and you need to get this in your concept, you need to make sure that you understand that information, when was it sent, who is it sent to, when was it to be delivered back by, was it reviewed, was it approved, that information needs to be attached firmly to the file. If you end up having your conversations outside of the system via email or even via phone, I know people who do all of this via Skype, that information is gone. You don't know I don't know if you approved it, if I didn't record it somehow. So using the collaboration tool, the exchange tools within the system, from within the system, I hate to say this, but don't use Frame.io because the information will be stuck in Frame.io. Your files aren't in Frame.io.
So that means the key of that collaboration is that it's somehow built or integrated with the media asset management system, the production management system?
It's actually an integral part. Collaboration is an integral part of any asset management system. It must be. Because even if you're looking at it from an archival point of view, you have different user rights, and users generate information like metadata, like comments, like I need an on-demand transcoding, I'm going to publish this here and there and the other. That's what your own staff does. Your external partners do exactly the same thing, or your customers do exactly the same. Don't lose that information, because it's much more, I'd say, business critical than, if Mr. Smith, your internal Mr. Smith gave this item 5 stars. It's more important to know if your customer gave it 5 stars.
So within this session, we've mainly elaborated on this file or project exchange. And as an example, we gave information about how this could be implemented with the Flow Center, obviously your product. Would you say that it makes sense for a customer not only to think about the file exchange when looking onto Flow Center? What else could he achieve in all this ecosystem and environment?
Well, the Flow Center is it's a fairly central part of the media asset management. Will be pretty much a central part of any environment, because you need at the end you do need to store the media somewhere, and you want to store the metadata somewhere, all the tracking, all the logging, etc., etc. So what the Flow Center really does, and I mean this is also true for X-Dream Fabrik, our joint effort with all of our partners within X-Dream, to generate a much larger solution as a service offering. But on the screen that you're now showing, you can see what the Flow Center really is about. It's a large system, and it covers everything from the initial idea to the initial production. It helps you integrate all of your devices, your editing suites, your maybe existing transcoders, other databases, your graphic system, etc., etc. Manage all of your storages that you may already have. It offers a workflow part, so you can freely design any workflow. This is obviously crucial to save time and money. You want to automate as much as you can. It makes sense to you, because you're going to save money, you're going to save time, and you're probably going to get less errors. Then, as the most visible, the bubble is a little bit smaller here, it says archive, but that's actually the most visible part of the system. That's where your editorial staff, not your technical staff, but your editorial staff will go and look for content, preview it, maybe add metadata, maybe do rough cuts, maybe do more complicated cuts and generate EDLs. They'll do transfers, they'll kick off workflows, etc., etc. So the archive is kind of the most visible part to the MAM or PAM system. And it depends, we talked about SAP. Those guys never look at the archive. They just go, they all move around in the button all the way to the right, called playout. And you can see what we mean, or what we talk about when we say playout. So we're talking about broadcast, VOD, web, app, rooms, shops, etc., etc. But again, the room is a fantastic way to collaborate, to actually exchange information or files. It's an integral part of the system. So what we do, generally speaking, is we really cover an entire workflow or value chain for media content. Within X-Dream Fabrik, that, which is I think is a strong foundation, that's coupled with a lot of excellent additional parts to the solution, superb ingesters, good planning tools, additional workflow, building power. There's playout facilities of all sorts, and of course it's an option to move your operation, or even just move the bit that you can't handle anymore internally, move that onto an external server, let's just call it. I'm not going to call it the cloud, because everybody's talking about the cloud, but I'm not quite sure if that's the right phrasing. We're basically taking the worry off your hands, but we're offering, it's a large system, and it's a well thought out and well comprised system offering. And again, it's a Chinese menu, so it has a lot of different parts, not just what the Flow Center does, which is modular in itself, and we can make that fit to very specific needs.
So that means with an X-Dream Fabrik, I can get all these modules to create my media flow, and obviously X-Dream Fabrik is a hosted services platform, so it is more when I've decided to have someone else hosting that for me, not inside. Now, as we talk that very moment about file exchange, that is then like in your case SAP, when people don't really touch the materials themselves, having production partners doing that. When I'm more like a broadcaster, would that mean that I can have some hosted services and also something inside my facility,
Yes.
and I would exchange content probably kind of with myself?
In a certain sense, you would, exactly. You'd have a hybrid approach. You'd actually have two instances, one sitting in your office or your own data center, and the other one being more of a hosted version, could be in the cloud, could be dedicated servers, etc. And those two systems would based on rules that you've set, would exchange data. So for example, let's use the SAP example again. SAP got an upload of a super duper film from the production company in Hong Kong. They would review it, always based on the preview, mind you. That preview can sit happily on the hosted service. If approved, that preview would get uploaded, but not to the hosted services, but directly into SAP's vault, because that's what they own. The previews that are then rendered, or the distribution versions that are that rendered, might go back to the cloud for playout, because that's going to be better connected. It's in the cloud. You can feed all the websites, do your live streaming and what have you. So that's where the workflows really come in. And it's all about attaching everything that you have. If you've got nice scheduling there, you've got additional ingest platforms, you've got some nice OTT playout attached to the whole thing. That needs to be integrated with itself, and that's what Extreme Factory already offers, because it's already there, it's all integrated. And you can just orchestrate the modules that you've decided to pick in the way you see most fit. And that's a module delivered in Extreme Fabric as well.
Oliver, thank you very much. It sounds to me like it brought us now back to our opening session from yesterday when we spoke about especially hybrid environments.
Yeah.
So you just explained one of these hybrid environments. So have the content where it is needed.
And
don't
when.
move it around too much. Move it when there's a need for it.
Yeah.
And make it accessible for the people where they are.
Yeah, precisely. And do it intelligently to avoid cost and avoid time. That's hybrid.
Very true. Oliver, many, many thanks. Many thanks to all of you that have been with us in this session. This is the end for this one, but the next one is about to come up here in the auditorium in just some minute. Then my colleague Joanna will be here with you. Thank you so much for being with us.